Comencemos con el oro. The Bank of International Settlements' decision to categorize gold as a top-quality liquid asset sparked a competition among central banks worldwide to exchange paper currency for real gold. Now, just 33 months later, the price of gold is $2,000 per ounce higher. When you take away the monthly changes in the legacy market, gold has quietly and steadily increased by an average of $60 per ounce. The constant demand for gold has pushed the traditional paper market to a breaking point that can only be fixed by a large bid-only margin call or by changing the price of gold set by the U.S. Treasury. Now that global physical gold exchanges are active enough to set a real supply and demand price outside the CME LBMA system, the quiet process of revaluing gold, which started right after the Bank of International Settlements classified gold as a top liquid asset on January 1st, 2023, has gained enough momentum to compel the U.S. Treasury to revalue its gold. And we'll take a look at those footprints. As we've been pointing out, every non-dollar currency price of gold has reached all-time highs. But as we've been discussing, the real change is that China has removed its restrictions. The yuan gold price met all Basel III requirements. The mainstream media still hasn't noticed this. Analysts focus on combining news, interest rate changes, and other factors that significantly affect the paper market, but they completely overlook the ongoing competition among central banks to exchange dollars and other fiat currencies for physical gold. But here's the main point. No matter the price, they don't mind if it's high or low. They are collecting more. With the yuan-backed gold price following Basel III rules and being set through more SGE exchanges that are backed by physical gold, Beijing is quietly taking on the role of making gold convertible. This makes it easier to protect the yuan's value against other currencies, bonds, and more. The PBOC is quickly overtaking the dollar as the world's leading currency, pushing the last central bank that hasn't adopted Basel III to comply, which will soon lead to a change in gold prices. The mainstream media has generally overlooked that allowing the PBOC to set the value of physical gold in relation to U.S. Treasuries opens up the use of stored gold as collateral for financing across the BRICS system and in dealings with the West. Now, gold is flowing into these gold vaults that face the West. To explain how it works, this gold is traded entirely outside the traditional financial system, using vaults backed by Basel III compliant yuan gold. The gold stays in the vaults, therefore there is no weakening or instability when it moves. As we mentioned in our last episode, the price of gold in SGE is easily exchangeable with the lower-priced gold in the Western central bank's COMEX. This has led to a depletion of gold, pushing every global central bank to quickly exchange more rapidly increasing dollars for the same amount of gold. The White House now realizes that foreign central banks are once again targeting U.S. Treasury gold. It was similar to when it was criticized in 1971 when Nixon ended the ability to exchange gold for dollars. This is very important. So, the only method left for the Fed to suppress gold prices has been taken away. If those prices don't start to show an actual balance of supply and demand, every single ounce will be used up. It's not surprising that Treasury Secretary Besant is now asking for a complete audit of the Fed, which includes the 8,133 tons of Treasury gold managed by the Fed. We discussed this a while back, but it seems to have faded away, and now it's back as a priority. Even Bloomberg mentioned that this morning, so it is a top priority. This would be the first complete and reliable audit that would thoroughly check all the vaults. It would also be secret, revealing the level of double ownership claims on U.S. Treasury gold. Remember, much of it was borrowed. This needs to be finished before the U.S. gold GRA account can be adjusted from $42 or $8 billion, based on current prices, now approaching a real market value of $1 trillion. So $8 billion to $1 trillion with just a click of the mouse. Clearly, this process of reevaluating would cause gold prices to rise much higher than they are now, and that would create a good cushion when it's reassessed. If the White House doesn't act to revalue soon, there won't be enough pressure to fulfill delivery obligations. This could lead to a force majeure situation, causing global prices to rise significantly. As a result, the Fed may have to accept much higher prices. Now they can print their way out, but this will increase prices. As we discussed earlier, the best time to reevaluate gold would be right after the COMEX December futures contract expires on the first notice day. The first notice requires all long or short derivative bets to either settle or be ready to deliver by November 28th. This contract could allow deliveries to happen until the last day of December since it's a December contract. However, the revaluation event would require that every ounce that is still due must be delivered before January 1st, 2026. With the current setup, this would mean needing to purchase a lot of gold at market prices in the meantime. Mainstream media experts have been saying that gold was overbought for a long time, even before it reached the last $1,000 increase. What they don't understand is that the COMEX has become a price taker, not a price setter. Let's take a moment to look at the opportunity. This is a quick announcement. We're recording this before the FOMC meeting. Today is Wednesday the 17th, and there's about an hour and a half until the FOMC meeting. As you mentioned, we always expect some speculative excitement to be cleared out occasionally, and we do see it. But it's not very deep. It's influenced by algorithm-driven factors during events like, as I mentioned, the FOMC today. This is helpful because it quickly identifies the points where central banks and governments expect these speculators to be eliminated. Spoiler alert, as we will see, these paper-driven drops are very shallow, leading to a series of higher steps that provide support for a rally. Now let's examine the current situation and how it gives us hints about future prices. Now remember that this is the COMEX or the futures chart, and this shows the so-called overbought conditions. As I mentioned, the legacy actors in the so-called overbought market conditions have not been able to manipulate the historical wash and rinse cycles. They have had to gradually accept the prices set by others, and this has become even more true lately. ¿Y por qué? Because many margin calls are happening, meaning the brokers are asking for more money to back your short positions. Now, since every central bank in the world has followed the BIS, they are protecting their national currencies and related bond investments by using physical gold. Eso es lo que está pasando. And it left the only Fed that is not compliant with Basel III, the only central bank still lacking enough gold. However, the imbalance is about to be fixed. The only way to achieve this is to increase the value of U.S. Treasury gold reserves to market prices at $42. There is proof that U.S. Treasury gold is rehypothecated to some extent, a belief supported by respected institutions. This is also in light of the major delivery delays and refusal to perform vault audits for the Bundesbank. As a result, foreign central banks are actively bringing back their gold from the interconnected vault systems in the US and London that are traditionally diluted. No se les confía. Wow, if you went to your vault and asked to get your gold back, you'd be standing there with your arm out, and they'd be telling you, "Oh, you can't have it." Well, it's there, but you can't even see it. I'm asking, what would you do? You would ask for everything. I remember years ago when Harvey Organ went to Scotiabank to ask to see his gold and silver stored in the vault. They refused to show it to him, so he had to call the RCMP. When the police arrived, they discovered that it was missing. It happened somewhere in Asia. These numbered bars were located in Asia, so it is clearly being borrowed out. Clearly, there's a lot of distrust in this system. What we're discussing here are two main questions. How much physical gold that hasn't been backed or allocated is still waiting to be purchased in the market due to demand from competing central banks? The other question is, since market demand will push up the supply of bullion that can be delivered immediately, what do you estimate the total price will be? Así que eso es lo que vamos a hacer aquí, and it's always changing. That's why we want to keep you informed. Regarding what our liquidity providers are observing and how to best summarize that. Clearly, after the COMEX gold market started in 1994, the real global supply and demand information was intentionally hidden. This allowed the remaining 8,033 tons of gold to be secretly leased or sold in the market. Without a thorough audit, we can't know how much of this gold has been reused or owned by more than one party. There are some hints available, however. In February 2023, the Fed did not let the German Bundesbank check the contents of the New York Fed vaults. This resulted in the Bundesbank asking to bring back the first 300 tons of their 1,350 tons stored after World War II. Most of this was from the 50s and 60s, but it relates to the time after World War II. These were bars with numbers. However, when asked, instead of saying, "Oh, okay, we'll fly these 300 tons out," it's technically deliverable at T plus 0. It is really in the vault. It should stay there. It should be easy to hand it over or move it safely from a Brinks or Loomis truck to the airport. You should actually be 12 days, which is normal. We observe this type of silver being moved in 25-ton shipments. So really 12 flights and 25 tons should have been enough, but they were discussing a 7-year process with a delivery time of 2,155 days. This is ridiculous and hard to believe, but the evidence is available. That's exactly what they really wanted to do. This reveals how short on gold the CME LBMA cartel is. They were discovered. The first delivery default by a central bank raised a serious concern. It suggested that the total amount of U.S. Treasury gold holdings listed or not listed might have been counted twice or used as collateral more than once. While the embarrassed Fed rushed to shorten the time needed to bring back German gold, it was found that when the gold arrived in Germany, the bars were not the same ones that had been deposited originally. The combination of bars included recently made bars alongside some 1930s 22-karat melt gold, further showing that the original Bundesbank bars had been sold and were being replaced in a confusing exchange.